When you think of Rhode Island, you think about our beaches or our vibrant cities. When you think of Rhode Island, you picture the beauty of our parks or public art. You may have seen a show downtown, watched the sunset over the city, bought jewelry from a local business, or have eaten dinner at a local restaurant. It's a small state, yet it's filled with over 1 million people who have a lot of pride in what we have to offer. But when you think of Rhode Island, do you picture this? While we certainly recognize food as a highlight of our tourism, we forget to praise the agriculture behind it all. It is one of Rhode Island's top industries, contributing almost $60 million in farm product sales each year. If you had to guess how many farms there were in Rhode Island, you might say a couple of dozen at most, or I know there's at least one because I've driven past Wright's dairy farm. But in reality, farmland accounts for about 10% of our land, with over 1,200 farms in the state. We host nearly 60 farmers markets throughout the year and are second in the nation for direct retail sales. So we've heard these big statistics boasting about our farming industry. But what is it like to actually be a farmer in Rhode Island? How do you end up on the path to making food for a living? Who's behind the steak on your plate? The herbs you used for dinner? The milk in your fridge? These are the people in our community who are feeding Rhode Island.
My name is Esther Bishop, and the name of my farm is Gnarly Vines Farm. We raise meat animals, meat chickens, meat goats, pork, and then some specialty birds. It was kind of an accidental thing. We used to live up in Boston, and after I had my first child, we decided that we wanted to get out of the city, go live a more simple life. So we found this property, and we were supposed to just be a homestead. You know, we bought our first 25 chickens, had it in the backyard, just have fun, had a couple goats. And then from there, we met this restaurant owner who had a farm-to-table restaurant, and she wanted eggs. We had a surplus of eggs from having 25 hens, and we started selling eggs to her, and she's like, I want more, and that's kind of how we started.
My name is Jordan Goldsmith, and I'm the owner-operator of Moonrose Farm. We here have had a really wonderful, this is our first year even growing in the ground here, but you can see obviously our crops are doing really well with pretty minimal inputs. We decided to grow a variety of crops. We have probably at least 80 different varieties of crops, maybe 100, if not more. I had started by going to Johnson & Wales University, got a degree in culinary arts. And from there, I worked in a lot of different restaurants in Providence, worked with sourcing vegetables from many local farms, and ended up meeting farmers that sort of convinced me that there was more to the food scene than just working inside of a concrete building all day and never seeing the sun. My partner continued to work in restaurants for several years so that we could fund purchasing a piece of property, and we leased about 3 acres in Cranston for 4 years and ended up finding this property here in Rehoboth, Mass, and moved here and now farm about 7 acres. We added chickens to our operation to help improve the fertility of our soil. We raise them for eggs, and we also started raising a small flock of meat chickens as well. And we basically just wanted to get closer to where our own food was coming from, but also be able to provide food more equitably to the people that really needed it. So we work with the Rehoboth Food Pantry and make donations to them once a week. And we also donate produce to Food Not Bombs, which is another organization in Providence that provides free meals to people who need it.
All right, so my name is Dan Flynn, and this is Butterfly Farm. So Butterfly Farm has been here for probably 200 to 300 years. It was originally the Mariposa farm, and this farm raised standard-bred racing horses. It was purchased by Sales Bleachery, which then named it the Butterfly Farm. The dairy barn over on Chase Farm, which is right next door, burned down, and so they purchased Butterfly Farm because they had a working dairy to move all the cows over to be milked. So now the this butterfly farm is only about 77 acres. It's all protected land, so we can't be built on unless it's for agricultural purposes. So we'll start with the animals. So we always have fresh eggs. We raise broiler chickens 9 to 10 months out of the year that we sell. We sell the poultry meat to the public. We also raise sheep, so we sell lamb. We raise pigs for pork, beef cows for beef, and goats. We also have meat goats as well. So we always have animals in production. We also have horses here for recreational purposes. We have donkeys to protect the sheep and the goats from predators. So then we move into the spring where we're selling our bedding plants and vegetable plants and perennials down in our farm stand out front. And then we start to move into vegetable production season. So from the middle of April all the way until probably the end of October, we're producing vegetables in the farm. And then come the fall, people start coming in October and November to pre-tag their Christmas trees, which they then pick up in starting the weekend after Thanksgiving, all the way till Christmas. And then it gets a little quiet, from Christmas into January. We're just taking care of the animals and getting ready to start the seasons all over again. And then we get right back to it in February when the greenhouse is open.
I'm Kelly Roberts. Our farm is called Roots Farm, and I run it with my husband, Michael Roberts. We have a mix of vegetables, a lot of tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, spinach, cucumbers, all kinds of things. My husband and I decided to become farmers after finishing up grad school in engineering. We took a year to just wanted to do something different and learn how to grow food. We didn't really have any intent on becoming farmers at that time. We decided to come up with a business plan. We got jobs back in the engineering field and then transitioned, part-time until the point where we felt like stable enough on the farm that we could switch to full-time farming.
My name's Rachel Play and my farm is Radia Herbs. Traditionally, I grow medicinal herbs and I dry those herbs for tea, and then I also sell fresh herbs to different chefs. But this year, due to COVID, I've added vegetables and flowers. I grew up in a small mill town, so we always had farms that now are dwindling. They're being sold off for subdevelopments. But I grew up with dairy farms, I grew up with veggie farms, and it always seemed like fun to me. And my dad always had a big garden, and I always loved being there. So I think it was just something I was always drawn to. It was a way to give back and to share. And then as I got older, I went to school for film, and I wanted to be a journalist. But I felt like documenting wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something a little bit more active. So I went and became part of this program in Connecticut that's a Jewish farming program. And you learn about your background, your religion, and also take the agricultural lessons from Judaism and put it into organic farming practices. So that really cemented it for me. And I felt like the way I could do the less harm on earth is by growing food for people. And that's what I wanted my job to be.
So when I was young, I was probably 6 to 7 years old. Good family friends who were relatives of the owners of this farm, they started to bring me around the farm. So from an early age, I started to help out here, as much as a 6 or 7 year old can do. But it was always a huge interest of mine. Agriculture was always a love of mine. When I was a little kid, I had every farm set imaginable. So as I went through high school, I still worked here in high school, and I got really involved, and I decided I wanted to go on to college for agriculture. So I double majored at URI in both environmental horticulture and animal science. I worked quite a bit on their farm while I was there, continued to work on this farm, went on to teach agriculture at Bristol County Agricultural High School. I taught there for 8 years, teaching animal science, focusing on livestock and a small bit of equine. And then I purchased this farm in 2016. I left my teaching position at Bristol Aggie to farm here full time and run the dog training program that we have here as well. When I purchased this farm back in 2016, my goal was always to leave my teaching career once I could financially do it. Get to that point where I had to make the jump, and I did it, and it's the best thing I ever did.
For some of these farmers, they're nurturing more than just crops and animals. They're also raising families.
To raise a family on a farm has its own unique challenges. There's a lot of balancing between the labor needs of the farm, for example. You can really just keep working and keep working and keep working. It doesn't stop. But I've learned a lot about knowing when you just have to stop and walk away. It kind of gives you an end point. You have to take care of your children. You have to cook dinner for them. It's not like before you had kids when it was just you. So it's more figure out the balance to do a good job raising your children also.
Seeing the contrast of having the kids growing up here on the farm and seeing kids growing up in the city, it gives a complete different outlook in life for both us, the parents, and the kids. When my kids go to the city, they're like, overwhelmed by all the noise and all the everything that's going on. And here at the farm, they have the freedom to, do whatever they want and learn a lot about life from birth to death and from, where your food comes from. It's just, there's no comparison to anything else. My kids do not want to ever leave the farm, that's for sure.
In between working on their farm and caring for loved ones, farmers are also connecting and learning from one another. One organization called the Young Farmer Network has played a key role in connecting farmers of all backgrounds.
Yeah, the Young Farmer Network is amazing. If I didn't know about it, I don't know where we would be now. We've made so many connections. We've met so many people that have helped us along the way. Even just meeting people and having their number, being able to call them and say, hey, I need a tractor repair guy. Who do you use? Or like, where do I get this product? Or how do you do this? It's really valuable to have people around the same level as peers that are willing to share information. Last year, we went to a lot of other farms and saw how they farm, and that is just invaluable to see how people do something very similar to you, but with a totally different brain and a different perspective. And I always come back with new ideas, and I always learn new techniques or meet a new person in the area.
As we glimpse into the lives of farmers, we can see that owning a farm is a passion. Despite working other jobs or having a different plan for their life, all of these people were eventually drawn to becoming farmers. For some, agriculture is a hobby, but for others, it's their livelihood. Most Rhode Island farms gross less than $20,000 per year, and many farmers still need to make part of their income from an off-farm job.
So I'm in kind of a different situation. I have always had a part-time to almost full-time day job while farming until this year. I was laid off when COVID started, and it's scary, but it's also been a blessing because it's allowed me to fully put all my energy into forming this to be a viable business. I've always made a profit before, but this year I've been able to make more money. That's the part. I love growing. I love putting food on people's plates, but the business side, I have to learn a little bit more and develop and think more like a business woman. And a lot of small farms have to have supplemental income, especially in the beginning, to make it work. And I think a lot of us deal with that identity crisis of, are you a real farmer? Depending on like how much money you have, how much land you have, what you're growing, how much time you spend off the farm. I think that's something that a lot of younger farmers, that's something we all wrestle with as we try and grow our business.
Understanding the business of farming and the bigger picture of Rhode Island's food system requires the introduction of some key figures behind the scenes. There's the large-scale work of Rhode Island DEM to the intimate partnerships between a nonprofit called Farm Fresh Rhode Island and local farmers. And amidst government agencies and smaller organizations is the role of someone who is vital to filling gaps to better connect our food system.
My name is Ken Ayers. I'm Chief of the Divisions of Agriculture and Forestry at Rhode Island DEM. Historically, 60 to 70% of the agricultural income in Rhode Island has come from non-food crops. We've always had a really strong industry and still do in that regard. The dynamics have changed somewhat over the past several years, and it's more of a 50-50 split. There's such a strong culture and interest in local agricultural products, whether that be food or not, that our market is buffered in a sense from some of the things that might affect larger states with larger export markets. Many of them rely upon retail, which is really probably the biggest transformation over the past 30, 40 years, away from a wholesale mentality marketplace to retail. COVID has essentially enhanced that marketplace. Interest in local food has been at an all-time high. My job here at the Division of Agriculture is to support all that, and in particular in Rhode Island, to work closely with other people that have the same interests and mission in mind. It's not always state government. Organizations like Farm Fresh Rhode Island, Open Maine, Southside Community Land Trust, etc. They all have the same interest. Maybe they're covering a different span of it, but I have to be and want to be very collaborative in that regard.
So my name is Thea Upham, and I'm the Programs Director for Community Access at Farm Fresh Rhode Island. Farm Fresh Rhode Island is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we just moved to Providence, Rhode Island from Pawtucket. Our mission is to grow a local food system that values the health, environment, and quality of life of all Rhode Island farmers and eaters. So we're really trying to think about all aspects of the food system and all stakeholders that are invested in it. Supervising our community access programs, which right now are our farmers markets. So Farm Fresh Rhode Island manages 10 of the 44 farmers markets in the state. So it's a lot of them, but not all of them. A lot of people think that we manage all of them. But we end up working with most other farmers markets in Rhode Island because we manage a program called Bonus Bucks. So we fundraise to match SNAP benefits. We run that program at our markets and then at about 32 of the 44 markets in the state. So almost all of them. Two other aspects of our community access programs are our farm to school program. We go in to do cafeteria taste tests, and we run a promotional program called Harvest of the Month to try to increase awareness about what kind of fruits and veggies grow locally in school settings. And then we also operate community education programs. Community access programs are really kind of about increasing the availability and affordability of food and making sure that people can access food, whether or not that's making sure that the food becomes available to them and they can physically get there, but also thinking about the economic accessibility of local foods.
Much of what we do is relationship based. We've worked very, very hard at DEM and across the board to develop that collaborative atmosphere, and I think that's one thing that I've seen, that's just the way that Rhode Island is, and it's an attractive part of our state. That's really what I think has made us as adaptable and effective as possible when a shock like this hits.
The food system is so big. There's so many stakeholders. There's the fisheries, and then there's the food business and the Department of Health. There's schools and universities and feeding programs. There's food resource recovery too, and thinking about compost and how the food cycle really closes that loop. Rhode Island already was really innovative in hiring the first in the nation state director of food strategy. It was Sue Anderbois. It was really helpful to have her in a facilitator role where sometimes you'd have the Department of Health looking to make food as cheap as possible, so that way it can be really accessible to all populations in Rhode Island. But the challenge is that in order to grow cheap food, you might be degrading the environment, or you might be underpaying your workers or abusing worker rights. There's always tensions with the food system, and it's been really helpful in Rhode Island to have someone be a mediator to that and kind of help those conversations to really think about how we can move forward growing the local food system in a way that's responsible to all parties involved.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Sue Anderbois. I'm currently the Climate Energy Program Manager for the Nature Conservancy in Rhode Island, but I think we are talking mostly about my former role, which is as the state of Rhode Island's first Director of Food Strategy. I filled the role of Director of Food Strategy from 2016 through the end of last year. And so the role really was meant to kind of create the state's first comprehensive food strategy to support our local food economy. And so to create that strategy and then begin the implementation of it to really just bring everything together. And so my experience with the food system prior to that position was I've been a Rhode Islander for about 8 years now. And I went to my first food policy council meeting about an hour after I moved here, literally 1 hour, the moving trucks left and I was like, peace. And so was kind of involved in the food system in a volunteer capacity for a number of years in Rhode Island. before becoming the director of food strategy. Yeah, so we were the first in the country, and it was really the confluence of a few things. So one was, the Food Policy Council at the time was advocating for this really strongly. We had a new governor coming in who has now been our governor for a number of years, Governor Raimondo. And there was a recognition that there was a lot of really good stuff happening on food, but it really needed some more capacity at the state level and some more like big picture overarching thinking. So it was something the Food Policy Council was really pushing. And then two other things were happening. One was the state already had something called IFNPAC, which is the Interagency Food and Nutrition Policy Advisory Council. IFNPAC was really like a number of the different cabinet directors who work on food issues. And that board was created by statute. And that was meant to, like, in the statute, it's like, okay, you guys get together a couple times a year and just coordinate on food stuff. Like, food is important. It touches all your agencies. Get together and do it. And there was a real recognition from that body of, it's great that we're getting together a couple times a year, but we come up with all these great ideas and want to coordinate, but we're all maxed out. Like, we're all doing the things that we're required to do already. And so a real recognition that we needed some more staff capacity. And at the same time, we had a fantastic new governor who, well, when she came into office, she commissioned a study from the Brookings Institute to really look at, what are our big areas of opportunity economically in Rhode Island. And food came up as one of the big areas it came up kind of across the board. So it was part of tourism and it was part of, all sorts of different things. But then as its own right, like, the food system employs a large number of people, and it's like one of the only industries in Rhode Island that continued to grow through the recession. It was like food and clean energy jobs. And so this confluence of things of like outside advocacy, internal department directors wanting this, and then also this study pointing out the importance of the food system. And then the icing on the top was when a funder said, okay, well, if you guys try this out, we'll pay for it for the first 2 years. So that was they're like, first 2 years, let's see if it works. And then if it does, we expect you guys to keep going with it. And if it doesn't, we did a cool experiment.
Ensuring that all Rhode Islanders benefit from locally grown food requires collaboration from all levels of the food system. These people represent just some of the many layers behind getting food to our community. Perhaps you've been to a farmer's market, or eaten at a restaurant that purchases from local farmers. There's an abundance of avenues farmers use to get their food to you.
Before COVID, we were mostly a wholesale farm, so we raise according to the needs of the restaurants, our customers. And after COVID and the restaurants started losing business or shutting down, we started doing a lot more retail. So we have retail customers, we sell to restaurants, we use a couple of home delivery systems like Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and we are also at farmers markets.
From my experience in talking to other farmers, getting your product from the farm to people is the hardest part. I do farmers markets in Bristol, Rhode Island. I do the Mount Hope Farmers Market a few times a month. Since I do medicinal herbs, I sell to different herbalists and doulas in the area. And I sell also to consumers through the apps What's Good and Market Mobile. And that's helped me get out to a wider audience. I sell to restaurants and chefs through Market Mobile and also directly.
The Market Mobile program, what it does is basically paired with our community access programs at Harvest Kitchen. It all kind of comes together thinking about all of these different ways that we need to be working to grow support for local foods in Rhode Island. It's a wholesale aggregation distribution program. Where basically, I like to describe it as a virtual farmers market, where we have 2 days that the website is open, where you can actually order products from our platform. All of the farmers list their own product size and price, anything that they get to customize everything. So they have total control over what price things are listed at to make sure that there's transparency in where that food is coming from and accountability to making sure that the farmers are getting what they feel like is a fair price for them. And the benefit of the program is basically all of the farmers and producers list on one invoice, and we do order day. The next day they drop everything off. We repackage everything, and we take care of the billing and logistics for the farmers. So they only have to make one delivery to here, even if they're selling to 60 customers across the state. And then in turn, the restaurant will only get one bill, even though they may be ordering from 10 or 12 producers.
We have a farm stand out front that right now is completely on the honor system. It's fully stocked every single day, and that serves all the local community. It's quite busy. When COVID hit, the farm stand probably tripled the amount of people coming in. I think people want to stay out of the supermarkets and shop in a smaller, safer environment. And we also use what's called the FreshCon app. So it's an app that you can go on, you can choose, products that you're looking for. It shows you the farms that have them available, and then a courier will pick up the products from the farm and deliver it right to your doorstep.
CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and it's a way that interested customers can support the farm, whether it's a great season or not so great, whether it's pouring rain or not, you're still going to show up and get your vegetables because you've committed to the farm. We were interested in that model, but decided, especially when we first started, we wanted to make it a little more flexible for the customers, the members, and for us. So we let customers order what they want when they want. So they don't get a set box. It's full choice. And if they don't want to order, they just don't order that week. It's basically an account through a season. They can spend it how they like.
So our CSA program has made our farm possible. The way that our model works is that all of our members pay up front anywhere between January and the beginning of our season in June. And what that allows us to do is purchase all of our supplies and our seeds. It also allows us to pay our employee who works full-time from April all the way up until when we start CSA season. They work the full season, but we don't have any income until we start growing vegetables in June. So from January to June, we're working the whole time, but we don't have money coming in. So the CSA program helps us spread out the finances. We have to do most of our purchasing in that time too. We need all of our supplies to be here before the start of the season. It has made us a lot more financially secure, and the reward that we pass on to our CSA members is that they receive more than they've paid for every week. So it averages out to be about $18 a week for what they pay for, and they usually receive upwards of $20 to $25 a week in produce. We have a weekly email that gives everybody recipe ideas because my partner and I are both chefs, so we know how to use a lot of this produce and give people inventive ways when they're really tired of cabbage, but we can give them some new recipe ideas. I think that it is also a commitment to healthy eating. I think a lot of our members wouldn't be able to make it to a market every week, especially with coronavirus and everything. A lot of markets closed, but they know that they're guaranteed their box of vegetables every single week for 25 weeks. They don't have to go be around a lot of other people. It's a contactless pickup just by nature. So I think given the pandemic and everything, it's a really good solution to getting people food for the full season.
When we purchase food from a grocery store, we usually don't think about the people behind that purchase. Nor do we think about the impact that has on the person behind us in line or the cashier ringing us up. With a thriving food scene in over 1,000 farms, it's surprising to hear that 90% of the food we consume comes from outside of the New England region. This is where two key plans come into play. First is the New England Food Vision, a regional goal for New England to be able to produce 50% of its own food by the year 2060. Second, and in support of that vision, is the Rhode Island Food Strategy, a 5-year action plan that creates a food system that supports healthful eating with a population that understands how to prepare and access nutritional food.
So the Rhode Island Food Strategy, which we called Relish Rhody, the goal of the thing overall was to take a more comprehensive systems level look at the food system in Rhode Island. I guess the other goal was really to make it a public-private partnership so that it wasn't just like, here's a document of things that the state's going to do, but really meant to be a strategy that reflected all of the really great work that was already happening on the ground, as well as the great work that was happening at the state level, and like how do these pair together to then build something bigger. But so there's preserve and grow, there was like creating new sustaining and creating new markets for Rhode Island food products. The third was around, really creating the business environment for food business in Rhode Island. So making this like the place to own, operate, expand, grow, whatever action verb you want to use, food businesses. And so some of that was like cleaning up our regulatory environment. Some of that was like smoothing up government processes. The fourth is around decreasing food insecurity or increasing food security in Rhode Island. And then the last but not least was around reducing food waste. So those were kind of the 5 overarching like focus areas of the strategy. And then there were like lots of sub goals underneath. I think in the time that I was there, we made a lot of progress across like a lot of the different issues. And I think part of what I'm proud of that we did was we better connected a lot of the agencies to kind of de-silo some of these issues across state government. So the agencies were already working together, but we kind of like greased those wheels. And also that we created better partnerships with organizations outside of state government. So it really was a thing where for initiatives that were happening outside of state government, the strategy was meant to just support those. I thought having the increased level of engagement and recognition that we all have different roles to play, and the state has one hat we wear or one role we can play. We have one tool we can use or some tools we can use, but other people have other tools. And so we're building something bigger than just what the state can do alone. And so creating those pathways and those partnerships I thought was really important.
We're one of the few states in the country that actually has a food strategy, and we're one of the few states in the country that had a director of food strategy. It was written pre-pandemic, and certainly one of the things that we've thought about as we've gone through the pandemic is how we can add to it, enhance it for the type of experience that we're going through. There are more people that need to be at that high level type role because of the pressures that are put on certain parts of the food system when a shock like this hits.
The New England Food Vision is something that's put forward by Food Solutions New England. It's another organization. They're based in New Hampshire. And they put together a report on what would need to be changed in order for New England to be regionally reliant on their food system by 2060. So the food vision is 50 by 60. Right now, only about 1% of the food that's eaten in Rhode Island is grown in Rhode Island. There's issues of scale when you talk about local foods. And the reality of Rhode Island is that it's really small, and we have a lot of capacity immediately to be eating more Rhode Island food. But the reality is that most food is being shipped in from California. And so the food vision is thinking about how we can make small steps towards becoming more regionally reliant on the food system.
Yeah, so the New England Food Vision was also part of the impetus to do a Rhode Island food strategy of like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, what role can Rhode Island play in helping us to get to the 50 by 60 goals? And a lot of what we were trying to do was help like increase and create new markets for Rhode Island food products so that like farmers could expand, fisheries could be selling more locally. One thing I was really proud of is we had a program where we were connecting Rhode Island food products to institutional markets and helping make those connections between producers, so farmers, fishers, and other forms of makers with larger scale buyers. And that was going to be kind of like one of the next steps of how we really expand local food in Rhode Island.
One event these strategies did not prepare for, as none of us could have, is a global pandemic. Like any other business, farmers have had to adapt to the impact of COVID-19.
The debate of having our store open to the public or not, so we've been pushing a lot more towards ordering online, pick up at the farm, or pick up at the farmer's market, where we can have a little bit more control of, how many people we can have around and adhering to all the social distancing things. But one of the major problems we're having is actually finding a slaughterhouse that will process our animals. We have 2 right here in Rhode Island that process large animals, and they're both like super booked. The USDA facility that processed birds, last year through COVID, they were also booked up, and they were very nice that they extended their hours to help us on Saturdays to have they were taking in orders on Saturdays too, which helped. But that's been like the biggest problem we're having right now. I have some animals that need to go, but there is no room.
So we also are a cut flower farm. We do retail bouquets, and we also do weddings and events. And that has been the major impact, has been that we are not doing any weddings right now. All of our weddings that we already booked have rescheduled. So we lost a significant amount of income because we take a deposit usually about a year in advance, and then we receive final payment a month before the wedding. Last year in Cranston, our field suffered a really devastating hailstorm that actually pretty much ended our season for the most part. We kind of tried to regroup, but we lost a lot of our field. It was sort of like a freak weather thing that you couldn't do anything about. We started to do a workshop program and try to teach people how to do flower arranging, or how to make wreaths with dried flowers, or how to preserve tomatoes or make strawberry jam and that kind of stuff. And that really kind of helped us cover our bases with money, because we now were taking on a huge mortgage to be able to farm here. This year we were not able to do that because of COVID. So thankfully, growing season has been pretty okay. It's been really dry, but we've been able to grow a crop. We haven't had any devastating weather events this year. But if we had a hailstorm and all of these other things happen, I don't know where we would be with coronavirus.
I'd say the main challenge of COVID-19 has been my responsibility as a business owner, how to run a business safely. The farm season really coincided with the start of COVID. So knowing how I was going to grow things, what was I going to grow, changed rapidly. I normally have a lot of volunteers at the farm, but when COVID hit, I was very scared to have anyone here. That was before we even knew about masks. So I was scared to be around anybody. So for the first few months, I had no help at the farm. But as we learned more about the virus, I learned how we could run our business more safely. Finding places to sell has been hard, and a lot of my wholesale accounts, for example, Trinity Rep Theater in Providence, they haven't had any shows, so I would sell them my bulk tea and they would serve it. Regular purchases from large companies have gone away, so finding out how to supplement that income has been challenging.
We do about 8 to 10% of our business in restaurant wholesale also, which has been like almost non-existent with restaurants being closed. Moving forward into the season with more restaurants being open, many of them have diminished capacity, so they're not able to order quite as much. We used to have a lot of weekly standing orders of bulk produce that we plan for in January and end up not being able to sell to the restaurants because they don't need the produce right now. So we had always planned on doing a farm stand on the property. It wasn't in our sights for this year just because we had so much going on, but we decided instead to make that happen now because we had all the produce and we really needed to sell it. Otherwise, I think just with the CSA, we would have so much extra food, which would end up being donated, but for our business, can't support our employees and ourselves and our mortgage on no money. So
We were still doing our farm share pickup because it's self-serve, there's no contact. But the markets were closed, so that was tricky. We had to start an online store and do all these pre-orders. That's a lot more management behind the scenes. That was a challenge. But the demand was higher, so actually it was good for business, but stressful in its own way. School was closed, we didn't have childcare. So there's that side that all parents were feeling in terms of getting work done.
As far as COVID affected us as a farm, it was actually beneficial to us. So most people were telling us they'd rather come to our farm stand than go out to the supermarket. I think it also exposed us quite a bit. People were home looking for something to do. People enjoyed, while not only purchasing their food, they can look out and see we have horses. We have a huge 2 to 3 acre sunflower field. So people loved coming out during COVID to just take photos in front of that sunflower field. But as far as agriculturally, COVID didn't affect us too much. The other thing people started to realize through COVID as they started to purchase from farms, wow, this stuff is so much fresher. If you come to our farm stand to buy tomatoes, those tomatoes were picked either that morning or the afternoon prior, versus you go to the supermarket and some of those tomatoes have been in storage with with a petroleum wax on them to protect them for, who knows, it could be 3-4 months. So I kind of think this may be a slight turning point as far as farms go. I think there's a lot of exposure to how beneficial it is to support your local farm. When the supermarkets were all out of meat, people were coming to us like, what do you have? And so I think people started to realize how quickly our food resources in the supermarket setting can disappear when something like a pandemic happens.
Right, we did actually a really hard pivot in March when all of the restaurants and universities that were main customers of Market-Mobile started closing down. And we knew that, that was unfortunate for the restaurants, but also Farm Fresh Rhode Island usually facilitates about $2.25 million worth of local food through Market-Mobile. And so the vendors would be out those sales if those outlets weren't available. So we had a bunch of boxes in our storage that we used to be running from a program we had closed down. And within 2 weeks, we had pivoted our wholesale aggregation distribution program to doing home delivery. We didn't really know how we were going to do it. We didn't even know if anyone would be interested. But the demand was tremendous.
Like seeing how the local food economy has pivoted with the current state that we're in with COVID and economic distress has just made me so proud of them and just so hopeful. And that was like what we were trying to build towards, is create these like resilient systems and resilient communities. So an example I'm thinking of off the top of my head is there is an organization called Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and they were running a program called Market Mobile. So they pivoted to doing home delivery. And they did it like within a week of everything closing down. They like entirely redid their model. And by the end of like April, they were doing sales at a level that they normally don't see until like fall time. Like they were doing really well. Seeing how resilient that system was. And I'm not trying to be like Pollyanna or overly sunshiny. Like there are real challenges our food system is facing right now, but seeing how they could come together to support themselves during a trial like this was just, I was so proud of them and so excited about all the infrastructure that had been built to see how they could like respond in an environment like this.
As Rhode Island recovers from the impact of COVID-19, so will our farmers and our food system. We've seen their capability to adapt. Understanding their backgrounds, who they are and why they farm, reminds us of the strength and resilience within our community. However, the challenges they face don't end with the pandemic. Food insecurity in our state is at an all-time high. Many local businesses have shut down or lost significant income, and we still receive most of our food from outside the New England region. There is work to be done in order for Rhode Island's food system to reach its full potential. But as more people begin to notice their local farmers, we may see a turning point towards a healthier, better Rhode Island.